Well, about maybe 15 or so years ago, as the music writing part of my life took shape, I became somewhat of a regular at the place you see behind me, where I have stood many a gig to wait to get into the place, and then also as press to be able to come at 5 o'clock and go in. The one and the only Birchmere. I remember one of my guests tonight saying that I should just have a cot in the back room since I'm coming so often. Subsequently, over the last decade or two, the Birchmere has become one of my very favorite and most treasured places on earth, as it is for so many people. Thanks to another one of my guests tonight, I was able to secure interviews with many amazing musicians. That was my in as a writer to help promote the gigs, but through the artists' PR folks, I was not only able to interview these people, but I got to meet and even hang out a bit with some of them in the back of the Birchmere famed Birchmere Green Room. I mean, true heroes of mine, you guys, like Peter Frampton. Got to hang out in the alley behind for 10 minutes and talk to him, which was one of the great thrills of my life. David Crosby a couple of times, Steve Earle, John Hyatt. I remember at Richard Thompson's show, I got to meet him afterwards, which was a major thrill, been a lifelong fan. But before the gig, I got a call from Gordon Lightfoot's PR agent that said he can do the interview today, and then after that, we don't know when he's going to be able to do one. He was approaching 90, and they really tried to get stuff in. So Gary and those guys let me sit back in the VIP room off the Flex stage room by myself to interview Gordon Lightfoot. And what a tremendous thrill that was, talking to him for 30 minutes. So that was another Birchmere memory. Other people like Suzanne Vega, Ann Wilson, Southside Johnny, one of my childhood heroes, even Herb Alpert, who I listened to as a child with my parents playing his music all the time in my house in Connecticut. A huge highlight of the night, of a night at the Birchmere, is when you walk in the door and you go over to the bar area, and out comes Gary Oelze, one of my guests tonight, the founder, owner, and operator of the Birchmere. Smiles abound, with a hearty handshake and a hello. He does it with so many people who show up as well. And it's right then when you know that the journey of that night's gig has begun. And also a greeting that I got all the time going to the show that I always look forward to is the amazing John Brinegar, the GM of the Birchmere, who runs a huge part of the operational part of the club and is always there with a hug and a how you doing. In some ways, it's like family. The relationship I've been able to foster personally with this incredible place, as well as a lot of other people, has been a highlight of my life, and I hope it will continue to be. In the mid-'60s, I think it was around April of 1966, Gary Oelze purchased a restaurant in South Arlington called the Birchmere, started to help run it, and then ended up owning it. Legend tells that this Kentuckian wasn't necessarily a champion of music. At least he wasn't going to be in the music business. He even said it was the farthest thing from his mind. But as things progressed early on, he realized at the time that there were, at first, a slew of bluegrass bands out there, and they needed some exposure. So he was able to work some things in with bands like the Seldom Seen, and become equally growing in their awareness in the area. Those two. It's funny because the original sounds of the Birchmere continue, the bluegrass, the folk, but it's become an astonishing roster of multi-genre artists that come to the Birchmere, and many are dear friends. And we're talking about all the people I mentioned, as well as others like Linda Ronstadt, Jerry Jeff Walker, Lyle Lovett, Mary Chapin Carpenter, on and on and on. Heck, there's even a book coming out about the Birchmere, and we'll talk to Gary about that as well. But make no mistake, as many of you know, the Birchmere is a beloved place. It's revered not only in the D.C. area, but nationwide as really one of the great music venues anywhere. And that is due in large part to not only to the team that is in the Birchmere, but my two guests tonight, who are right now, as you will see in a moment, sitting inside, unmistakably, that incredible hallway of posters at the Birchmere, and I could not ask for more utter bliss than to have them there. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome original Birchmere founder, owner, operator, pioneer, Gary Oelze, and longtime booking guru and master promoter, and my personal liaison for a long time, Michael Jaworek. Yeah, such a joy to see you guys. How are you?
Great.
Glad to be here.
I'm so glad to actually be in that room. I mean, even though I'm obviously virtual like all of us on Earth, it feels so great to see both of you guys and in that hallway. How are you doing? I think, first of all, I'd like to know how you're doing personally. This has been a crazy time, trying to figure out everything and trying to rejigger our lives. Gary, I'll start with you. How you feeling? How you doing? Have you found any new hobbies at home?
Yeah, worry, and it's called anxiety, boredom. It's
Right,
whatever.
right.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
finally got open, and July just on the weekends, and it's taken off very slow because a lot of we had to move the schedule. Michael moved the schedule backwards 4 or 5 different times. It was unbelievable.
right,
Nobody in the
right,
beginning thought it was going to be this long, and so that's where I made a few bad decisions, borrowing this free money from the government, but
right,
I should know nothing's free. But
right. Does it feel a little interesting, obviously, to have the limited seating, and how is that? What has that felt like, you guys, to have that going?
Well, it's really hard on us, but we're making sure that we obey all the rules and things written down, and we even go a step further. We got a guy that comes in with a atomizer or something that fogs a place like they do hospitals and old folks' homes, things like that.
Right,
We're maintaining plenty of safety. A lot of people are still scared to come out. Some shows we do very well on, but it's really, really hard. It's hard for me to get Michael to understand. Michael, we only have half the seating we used to,
Right.
right,
which means we can
right.
only pay half of what we used to, that kind of
Right,
thing.
right. Yeah, that's the bear of the fight right now. Michael, how's it been dealing with bands who are scrambling to play at wanting full houses? How's that process
Well,
gone?
it's varied. Some artists are very accommodating, understand that the old line about we came over on different ships but we're in the same boat now holds, and realize that we're working at 40% capacity, and we try to figure out deals whereby it can be financially viable for both parties. There are some where they set, pardon me, where they feel they cannot afford to take the date. I don't get into an argument with them because this is all such a personal choice now. There are some artists who
Right.
will, out of the limited number who are touring, there are some who at this point are afraid to play indoors. But I would say that seems to be loosening up as time has gone on, as it's getting colder, and the option of playing outdoors for some of these drive-in situations has diminished as it gets colder.
Right.
And of course, as people need income. So I think in the main, those artists who are willing to work understand the situation. There's no animosity going on in that regard,
Right.
the way there sometimes
Right.
is in negotiations.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's any loss of the reputation of your amazing organization there, and that's what's beautiful. That has been something that has sustained over the course of time. Gary, we're going to talk a little about the book that's coming out next year, but I wanted to take you back as a Kentuckian coming in and buying a place in Arlington. How did that evolve? Why did you come to Arlington? Did you live here, and then how did you buy the first Birchmere?
Well, I got out of the service in '63. Went to work for People's Drug Stores, if you remember them.
Yeah.
And there was a gentleman whose kid worked for me, and he would come by to pick him up after work, and we'd sit down and have a cup of coffee. And he said, "I just bought a restaurant called the Birchmere. It's about a year-old place, and the guy wants out of it." And he said, "I'll give you some stock, and you run it for me, and stock options." And we came to a deal. I said, "Okay, I'll run the place." And it was right behind Shirlington. In those days, Shirlington didn't have any restaurants and things, so we had a great lunch business. But in the evenings, it was pretty slow. So I started with putting in something on, a little bit of music on Wednesday night and Saturday night, and I never
Right.
envisioned the Birchmere. If I'd ever visioned this, it would have probably never happened. It was all
Right.
a step at a time, and this is the third incarnation here. So, but
Now, and then so bluegrass became kind of a staple of the original Birchmere, and that was something that you kind of did on purpose because you saw a lot of bluegrass musicians around this area that maybe needed a little bit of awareness, as well as coming into contact with Seldom Seen.
well, the bluegrass was very popular here at that time. I wasn't a bluegrass fan. I mean, I like all
Right.
music. I didn't mean I didn't like the music, but I wasn't a devoted fan. In fact, it was a pretty closed club then. I had a lot of trouble getting into the business because bluegrass people in those days thought the pie was only so big, and what was I doing sticking my nose in it? So
Right.
there were about 6 or 8 clubs playing bluegrass music, and I
Right.
would go see these bands in the clubs, and they would. They were joints. I mean, they'd have a TV on the bar. They'd have a bowling machine, and all this talking. It was more of a party then. And I thought, man, there's people here who want to hear this music. And
Right, right.
I was a big fan of the cellar door. So
Right.
I stole their. They had a little quiet sign on the table, and I stole that
Oh, that's great.
and had it printed up, and it said "in deference to the audience," and it took me a long time to figure out what "in deference" meant, but
Right.
I started putting in bluegrass groups and asking people to be quiet, and
Oh, God, I
it
love
worked,
that.
and it worked.
Yeah, I heard you. I heard you got rid of half the crowd one night.
Oh yes, we had
I love that story.
had a snowstorm, and there was about 30 people there, and they thought, oh boy, we'll have a party, and we ended up, Moose and I, the original door for person, we asked about half of them to leave, and
Oh, that's
we've
classic.
stuck to it religiously. We're a
Yeah.
dinosaur now. There became a lot of good listening clubs, and there were some good clubs back then. The Cellar Door, like I said, you could go to the Child Herald and a few others. Michael, right? You remember those clubs?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I became
Well, we-
a bluegrass club without even knowing it. I went up. Used to go up the old Red Fox and see the Seldom Seen. Became friends with Mike Aldridge, and talked John Duffy into coming down, playing the club. They played us a couple Saturday nights, and then I talked him into playing every other Thursday. And then I made him a deal. I said, I think we were getting $4 at cover charge, I believe is what it was.
Right.
So I said,
Right.
I said to Duffy, I'll give you $800 a night. And he said, how are you going to do that? And I said, well, it's $4 to get in. I guess, I guess we go to $8. And he said, it'll never work. It'll never work. And well, they sold out for 20 years. So.
Oh yeah, they sure did. I've got an amazing clip I dug up of walking through the front door of that place. I think it might have been it was the first Birchmere. Let's take a little bit of a look. Let's walk into the Birchmere and hear a little of that original Seldom Seen.
Live from the Birchmere, the Seldom Seen, and special guest Brian Bowers. Way down the bridge mountain, way down where the tall pines grow, lives my sweetheart of the mountain. She's my little Georgia Rose. Come listen to my story, a story that
I believe that clip was the shot for WETA. That was the first live show they ever did outside of the studio.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, I had no idea that was it.
Well, WETA was in Shirlington and all the guys
That's right.
I knew them all from lunchtime and such, and it was their idea. But that was the first live show WETA ever did outside of that studio.
Oh, I love that, Michael. You're talking about bluegrass being an original kind of expression, but it was a natural growth to evolve into other music, I would think, as a music club.
Well, when I approached Gary out of the blue in 1988 to book the club, I told him I thought I could both increase and diversify his bookings, that the venue was set up not unlike the old Cellar Door as a concert club where all sorts of artists could play there. It could be blues one night, jazz the next, R&B, folk, whatever was appropriate for the geography of the room. And
Right.
But I also knew that organic growth would be the firmest and the best way. So starting with bluegrass and folk, which he had in the room already, we sort of expanded like the concentric circles in a pool of water when you drop the rock, to move
Right.
out to, say, country rock, and then country, or from, say, a fusion jazz to the more R&B type jazz, and then straight R&B. So by doing this gradually, we were able to expand the audience in a organic, natural, and firm way. And thus now our email list is in excess of 150,000 people.
Oh, and the genres, as I look at your schedule over the years, the genres are just wonderfully across the board. I know that the club moved on to Mount Vernon Avenue in 1981. You began to continue and evolve your sound and your bookings, and you had this one guy come in and play a lot named Danny Gatton, and Danny's a local legend. Any anecdotes about Danny and his presence at the Birchmere? I know we do. Dave and Tom and the gang do the tributes to Roy and Danny now at your place. A little bit about Danny Gatton at the Birchmere.
Fun nights, great. Danny, great guy. I love to talk old cars. In fact, he and his brother were rebuilding a '49 Mercury for me.
Oh wow!
At the time. I think Danny liked old cars better than music. His
Right.
very last album was recorded at the Birchmere, and
that's fantastic.
that's a fond memory of mine. I ran sound on the original club for about the first 30 years, and
Right.
I remember once I asked Danny, I don't know why I did it, but I said, Danny, can't you turn that down just a little bit? And he explained something to me that I learned in a lesson in life was, but he said, Gary, I can't get the tone. I can't get what I want to hear. But you know what? He turned the amp around, facing the back of the stage, and because the Birchmere was a very small room, that second one, and
Right.
if that amp was hitting you in the head, I mean, yeah. But anyway,
One time we got a phone call from someone who said, I'm really enjoying the show. And now this is before the days of cell phones, so I didn't know what the person meant. She said, yes, I live across the street. Mr. Gatton is a tremendous guitar player. I said, ma'am, I hope you're not going to call the police. Oh, no. I just want to tell you how wonderful it sounded.
Oh, I love that. Well, you know what? We've got a clip of Danny, 1988. So it's the year that, Michael, you joined. I think right around the time of this clip. This is Danny Gatton at the second Birchmere location, ripping it up. I bet the neighbors heard it across the street. Let's check this out.
So it was to our good fortune that the cellar door closed then. So
Right.
they, they were doing cellar door production, so they would take Gordon Lightfoot and whoever and go to Constitution Hall, but they forgot all
Right.
about a lot of talented people like Tom Rush or Tom Paxton and
Yeah.
Ian Tyson and these guys that would come in there and play a week, but they didn't want to put them in the big halls, and we jumped all over that. I mean,
Right.
yeah. So
And you continue to be somebody who enjoys the sit down concert environment, which the Birchmere thrives on.
oh, I couldn't run it the other way. I mean, when we moved into this building, we do have a stand-up room, but it really bugs me. It's just,
Right.
I mean, no, I mean, the Birchmere's a dinosaur. There used to be a lot of great, I used to love the music hall in San Francisco, up in New York, the Bottom Line, and the Arc, and up in where were they? Up
Ann Arbor.
Ann Arbor, and
Right,
they-
exactly. Well,
you
it may be a dinosaur, but the dinosaurs are like Jurassic Park. They're as modern as anything. You guys are still the quintessential place. There's some great moments that I was able to kind of dig up, and you can elaborate on them as we go a little bit. I know that some of the last gigs played by people like Ray Charles were at the Birchmere, and these guys were legends. They did some of their last gigs there, and so did Glenn Campbell. And do you have any anecdotes about whenever Glenn played? Did he play before often, or was this a relative rarity?
He had played before. A real fun guy. He loved to tell Roger Miller stories. And
I love Roger Miller. Yeah, king of the road.
I'll tell you a Roger Miller story. Well, let's talk about Glenn. I mean, toward the end
Right.
there, I think we played him three times. Three times on the last tour. It was we had no idea that he was as sick as he was.
Right.
He hardly. His kids were wonderful and very sweet, and
They were in the band also.
they were in the
Right,
band and
yes.
whatever, and they would help him with things. But he played phenomenal. I mean, but
He sure did.
he would get into a break though, and he'd forget what he was doing, and he'd just keep on. And they'd go over and they'd slap him on the back.
Right.
Hey,
No,
Dad,
that's great. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was tough to watch, but boy, there was still some solid moments. We've got one to show real quick. It's a little bit of Glenn Campbell's last show here at the Birchmere, and one of his last shows ever, A Little Gentle on My Mind.
It's knowing that she goes always open like the wall. That makes me tend to leave my sleeping back roll up in the stash behind your couch. And it's knowing I'm not shackled by my kind words and buns. I need things that are dried upon some line. That keeps you in the back roads by the rivers of my memory. It keeps you in on my mind.
Wow, that gives me chills. Anytime you see him perform, and again, you're right, his family on stage, emotional stuff, and what a documentary about him as well. One staple of the Birchmere that I can see is the blues element that you guys bring in there. There are some amazing people, of course, legends like Buddy Guy and such, and then you've got the younger legends like Tab and Samantha. I've got a little clip I wanted to show in a minute of Buddy, but let's talk a little bit about the blues, and Michael, maybe you can speak to this on how that has really evolved into another Birchmere kind of big genre.
I got involved in concert promotion in Illinois in the early 70s, bringing Chicago blues acts to school where I was at the University of Illinois, so I was familiar with many of these players that I presented over the years. So it was a natural thing that when I acquired booking the Birchmere with Gary, that I would pick up the artists when they would come east. And so in the case of Buddy or the Nighthawks, or who of course are based here, or any other number of people, Albert King, even B.B. King was here twice. It was
Unreal.
a joy to see those artists ascend the stage here, because that was the music from which my interest in show business, if you will, sprang.
Yes.
And we had, I guess, one of the last B.B. King shows when he was
He did.
here, for example.
Yeah.
And it was a joy to see him be here.
Well, I love Buddy Guy when he plays the Birchmere, unfailingly walks around the room and, all the way to the back of the room. I remember seeing him at a community college when I was about 25, and he walked outside the door into the parking lot in the snow, and we were dancing out in the blues with Buddy Guy in the snow. I mean, that's kind of a thing. We're going to watch a clip from a real Waylon solo from Buddy Guy at the Birchmere. Yeah, he just has never really lost a lot in his playing. What an amazing guy. There's some modern blues folks and another, you guys have the Dave Chappells and the Tom Principatos and things like that. And also Tab Benoit's been an amazing part of your repertoire. Let's take another blues run before we jump back in here with Tab, Samantha Fish, and Tommy Castro.
All of whom have been here many times.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I picked the clip because they are part of the Birchmere. Let's watch these three go for a minute. Us to look at this building. It belonged to Kodak Film Company, and it was called Berkeley Photo, and they wanted us to look at it because it was empty and sitting, and they didn't want any industrial people to move in here, and right. So we made a deal on the building, and with Jim Matthews, he put it all together, and I'll explain who Jim Matthews is in the book. Right. But as we go along. But anyway, yeah, it was quite an adventure, but we needed to move, and I was actually going to stay on about 5 more years or whatever, and then 5 years went by, and I shook hands with Jimmy, and I said I'll do another 5, and that was 23 years ago. So ended up hanging out a little bit. Yeah. That's spectacular. And I know you guys have had a lot, again, a wonderful swath, and I loved reading some of the pre-research I was doing, Gary, and Michael, you too, I'm sure, but Gary talking about singer-songwriters being kind of the core, the impetus of the Birchmere in so many ways. Is that continues to be kind of in the back of your minds all the time? Oh yeah, that was part of the reason I did the book, or decided to do the book. Right. I was totally into singer-songwriters, and
I want people to read this book and want to find out who Mickey Newberry is, and Townes Van Zandt, and Tony Rice, and because there's so much music out there that these kids are, and I just mean younger people, have no idea. I mean, I'd envy them finding one of these acts and getting into them and listening to the music. I mean, we've had some people here that will never be duplicated. Danny Gatton's one of them. You'll never see another Danny Gatton. You'll never see another Mike Aldridge. You'll never see another Tony Rice. You know, you just it's impossible. And
it is, and one guy that I have revered meeting at the Birchmere, it's been two of the most incredible experiences of my life, is David Crosby, and the fact that David not only survived his own health and life, but talk about amazing singer-songwriters over the course of his career, and puts on beautiful shows here. Let's take a quick clip, a look at David Crosby doing Triad in 2015 at the Birchmere.
You want to know how it will be, me and her, or you and me. You both sit there with your long hair flowing. Your eyes are alive and your plans are still growing. Saying you, saying, what can we do now that we both found you? I love both of you
Writers, what's exciting is to present the new folk who follow in the track of some of the godfathers and godmothers. One, for example, Sarah Bareilles, has now gone on to greater glory on Broadway with
She
Waitress
sure has.
and some other shows,
Yes.
and a few others, like Duncan Sheik with Spring Awakening, where he wrote the music for that, and of course those from Potomac, Maryland, Tori Amos did her first public show here when she had her record deal and went on to greater glory.
And you guys been a constant for the Bacon Brothers, who have turned out to be a wonderful music act, along with Kevin's very successful movie career. It seems that they're kind of buddies of the Birchmere in some way.
They come in every year in the summer when Kevin is on hiatus from whatever TV show or movie he's making.
Right.
He has family in the area, and they come in for a long weekend, and it's very much a hometown gig. And both he and his brother Michael, who by the way is a well-recognized musician, composer in the documentary and PBS world, but it's always wonderful to see them here. And
I'm
very
going
gracious.
to roll it. I found this wonderful clip of one of their songs from back in 2017, and basically, as I said in the pre-meeting, it's a little Birchmere promo reel of sorts. We're going to roll a minute of this. I mean, you see the backgrounds and all of the. I think you even see the stage door in the back, and it's a song video. So I love this. Let's roll in a little Bacon Brothers at the Birchmere.
Golden taxis, silver planes, camelbacks and sleeper trains, toe the line and stay the courses in rented cars and carriage horses. How long can we keep this pace? How long must we run this race? Maybe we should let the wheel go, volume down and let it flow, just like two rivers looking for the sea, rapids raging through the hills, silent when the water stills. So close those famous blue eyes, roll along with me. like to river.
Well, that's wonderful. Again, it's like a Birchmere motif in the Bacon Brothers video. Wonderful. Well, we're almost out of time, but Gary, I wanted to ask you, I know both you and Michael can answer to this. I know you wanted to get back going. Businesses have to get back going. Everybody's been thinking of you, hoping that venues like you guys. I mean, I promoted NIVA every gig that show that I've done, and Save Our Stages, and I revere you guys. Talk a little bit about opening in July and what that mindset was.
Well, the mindset was that I've got to keep my crew together. Every one of these guys have been with Birchmere for 35 or 40 years. I wouldn't be here without it. Michael joined me 40 years ago. How many years?
33.
But
who's counting?
That's a lot.
And I couldn't do without him. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about, like you mentioned, John, our GM, or Bud, our sound people. The bands that walk in the back door, they expect that. They expect to see the same guys. They expect to see. They know what they're going to get. That kind of thing. We're not making any money. I hope we can break even a little bit towards the end of the year here and stay. But the main reason to open was to keep my guys together. We're a team, and Stuart in the box office and the chef.
Yeah, I love them all. It's a cast of wonderful people. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's our goal. That's just our goal.
Yeah, Michael, what are your thoughts on kind of how things are going to be turning on this next leg which could go 6 months into trying to figure out full attendance?
Well, we don't know. I mean, we are kind of waiting to see what will happen about a month from now, whether the government, federal or state, will allow us to increase or even go back to our original capacity. Right now we're operating at 200, which is 40%, and that's larger than almost anybody else within not just the state, but definitely within the marketplace.
It is. Yeah.
We've had to count on regionals, locals, tribute acts, many artists that we perhaps could not play in normal times. But the audiences have come out. Folks want to see shows. There's great identification of self by the music. People love like-minded souls, like to herd together. So we've been able to exist. I won't say that we've been doing slamming business, but we've been doing well enough that we've been able to survive. And like Gary said, everybody here works hard to make the place work. And it's a case where we have people on the staff who've been here for many years, and it's a very well-oiled, coherent machine. Kind of like the Yankees back in '27 with Babe Ruth and those guys. But,
yeah, way back then.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, or the early '60s Yankees. But in any event,
Are you open to any kind of federal stimulus funding, if I may ask?
We did that very early on, that first RRR or whatever it was, but I wished I hadn't. I thought it was going to be short term. I've loaned the Birchmere some money, and I've sold my boat, and I've sold my jet skis and whatever, and we'll be here. We'll be fine. It's nobody understands business that the Birchmere's probably taken already lost around $3 million. Now that doesn't mean that's our $3 million. That means that belongs to the bands, it belongs to the food companies, the purveyors, the beer companies, the whatever.
Yeah. All the lost income.
So
yeah.
Absolutely.
And I feel a little bit now. I mean, I'm hearing it from everybody else. I mean, we get the election over, maybe things will lighten up a little bit, because now they're putting politics into everything. So
yeah, they really are. I mean, I'm going to tell you, in 20 years of music writing, and writing on covering all different kinds of people and things like that, it's to an artist that is a Birchmere artist that says they love playing there, they love the people there, they love the way you guys handle the business end of it, the personal end of it. I've told Michael that, and I've told you guys that. And I'm telling you, pandemic or not, the Birchmere will live on. And I can't wait to get the hell back out there, man. You know, and run through the kitchen to find my seat. And
All right.
But I don't know if that's going to happen again because I'll have to wear a mask. But anyway, you guys are real special to me and to the entire music community, and we wish you very good luck. I'll continue to promote. I've been promoting you guys since you opened on the show, and we'll continue to do it. But thank you for taking out some time and talking about not only the current times, but what an amazing legacy you've created, Gary, at the Birchmere, and you too, Michael.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's do it again.
My pleasure.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
When all this
Thanks.
is over with. Yeah.
I'd like that.
All right.
That's what I'm talking to people. I'm like, you're coming back, and we're going to really do it, and we'll all do it in person, hopefully, right there. But best to you both. Take care.
All right.
That'd be great.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, what a fabulous experience